Yeah, so like Palworld kind of just came out of nowhere, or at least it did for me. Like just one day it just showed up on Xbox Game Pass and I played it and I was like, "Yo, this game is sick." It's like the Pokemon game I've always wanted. It's like they took Arc Survival Evolved but made it better. And then I find out that there's a ton of controversy. Actually, first of all, I find out that it's like blowing up all over the place. It's like the number one most played game on Steam ever. It's breaking all these records or some shit. So I find out it's hugely popular. And then the second thing I find out is that a bunch of people are butthurt and super mad about it for like stealing from Pokemon, and potentially using AI to generate some of the creatures or something like that. And apparently the map looks like Breath of the Wild or something. I don't know. I don't really give a shit about all that stuff. The game is really fun. That's what I mostly want to talk about. Um, in terms of the controversy, if some of the designs are inspired by Pokemon or straight up just like Pokemon designs, I don't really care. If they used AI to generate them, I don't really care. Um, it's fun, and most people compare it to like other Pokemon games or to like Breath of the Wild. I've heard a lot, but the one that I don't see a lot of is actually how it is basically like I was saying, Ark Survival Evolved, and maybe it's because that one hits closer to home because I used to play a lot of Ark, but this really does just feel like you know, a more cartoony, stylized Pokemon style Ark game where you gather resources and craft bases and tame creatures. Like, it's got a lot of similar mechanics to Ark, and that's what kind of sets it apart in the survival genre is the PAL system itself. Because in all of these survival games, um, a lot of the grinding is left up to the player, and in Palworld, you can use the things you capture to automate resource collection and item crafting and things like that inside of your base. And I think that's really where like the biggest innovation comes through in Palworld. That and its combat. Its combat is extremely fun. It's like baby's first Dark Souls game kind of deal, where like you have to dodge and like dodge away from attacks, and there are the like elemental types that interact with each other in terms of how much damage you're doing. But I just really like that style rather than again something like Ark where you just run your dinosaurs at each other and you mash the bite button over and over. In Palworld, it's a lot more involved. The combat is very fun. Traversing the map with sliding and gliding and being able to mount up on your creatures is really fun. The fast travel system is pretty good. It's got a lot of really good quality of life things for like inventory management, like a lot of the little things. Because everybody just looks at it and they go like, oh, they just stole Pokemon and made it like it's Pokemon but you have guns. And it's like, oh, there's all these little details that make the game so good. Like when you are dumping things in a box, you can just press one button and it'll just like take all of your applicable items in your inventory that can fit in the box and just put them in there. Um, and then the biggest thing, this one is huge. Your base, all of the storage inside of your base can be used at any crafting table. So, you know, any game, Minecraft, Ark, Rust, whatever it is, if you go to craft something, usually you have to have the materials on you. If you want to make a spear, you need the wood, you need the rock, you need some fiber, whatever it is, you need to have that on you. In Palworld, you just have to have enough of those things somewhere in your base. And that also means that you can share resources much easier with your teammates or people you're playing with if you are. And that is just like another huge quality of life thing that is so amazing. Been sinking a lot of hours into it. Building your base feels really good. That's another thing that's just like uh, such a nice thing where it doesn't punish the player unnecessarily. In that when you're building your base, first of all, the resources needed to construct like the actual floor, the foundations, the walls, the stairs, it's all much less resource intensive than most other survival games. In fact, this is very scattered, like I'm kind of going all over the place here, but a lot of people complain about the grind in this game because they think that it's supposed to be an open world Pokemon game, and they're saying, why do I have to grind for resources? But what it really is a Pokemon stylized survival game with the grinding much more toned down than most other games. If you play like Rust, DayZ, Ark, like actual survival games where you have to grind for real, you'll know that Palworld is actually extremely generous compared to those titles. So like I was saying, the base building, very generous. You don't have to put a lot of resources into building the actual structures themselves. And anything that you delete, you get all of the resources back. In most other survival games, you only get a portion of the resources back from things that you delete. And in this game, it's like, well, why would I punish the player if they misplace their table and they want to move it 2 feet? But let's talk about the pals, man. It's all about the pals. If you're playing early game, Palworld, you want to grab some Leaf Monk, you want to grab some Piplup. That's the penguin. His name is Piplup. You put a Chickapea in a ranch, infinite eggs. Another cool thing about the pals is that they kind of scale with the player in terms of like, so if you catch like a level 45 mammoth boss, but you're only level 9, then you get the mammoth and you can absolutely use it, but it's going to get scaled down to your level. But also, all of the pals will learn new moves and get stronger as they level up. So rather than something like an actual Pokemon game where you start with Charmander and then it evolves into Charmeleon and then Charizard, in this game they kind of split those things up into separate creatures. So instead of having one creature that evolves, you have, you've got your Fox Sparks, and then you've got things like Rubies, and then you have the fire like ox thing, Arsox, that's what he's called. So you just get stronger and stronger fire types. So if you want to get bigger, more impressive pals, you can. But if you fall in love with your little Fox Sparks and you want to use that for the entire game, it's completely viable to do something like that. You just got to keep it leveled up to where you are, and it's always going to be useful. Also, the pal skills, giving all of the pals a unique skill, like there's just so much creativity and love actually poured into this game that even if it was built on sort of a foundation of borrowing other people's ideas, I think that it completely innovated the survival game genre enough to warrant its success and its popularity. I think the creatures are fun, I think the world is bright and colorful and fun, and I think the gameplay is innovative and snappy. I think the combat is good, the inventory management is good, the resource production, using your pals, actually giving them a use, because again, I'm going to talk about Arc one more time. You could tame 100 things in Arc, and you know what they're going to be doing? Standing around in your base, lagging out the server. And yeah, you can get little Pokeballs to actually store your things in Arc too, but that's like tech, completely endgame stuff. This is like you start the game with a PAL box, you shove the ones you're not using in there, you keep the other ones out in your base, and they're actually being useful and helping you. Basically, if you want more of an in-depth opinion about how I feel about any of the controversies surrounding Palworld, there is a YouTuber named asmongold, and asmongold has a lot of opinions about Palworld that I basically agree with.
Success of Palworld proves that the only thing that customers actually care about is a good game. AI, slavery, bestiality, copyright infringement. It's a video game. These are pretend problems that people don't actually care about. Make good game equals people buy game.
Which is, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you feel about the way the game was made. The fact that the game was successful is the reality. And me being the player, what matters mostly to me is that I get a good product and that I get a fun product. Video games are entertainment. They're supposed to be fun. So all I care about is that if I pay money for a game, that I have fun. And Palworld, it delivers. It's fun. And again, I mean, I'm on Xbox Game Pass. I didn't even have to pay for it, but I would be happy to pay for it. It's a good game. The allegations that a lot of the creatures or whatever are, I don't know. I didn't know what even is the allegation. Stolen? Heavily inspired by? It's all, whatever it is. Some of them are worse than others. Like there's some of the pals that you could look at. You could look at Grisvolt, and you could look at Electrobuzz or whatever the fucking Pokemon's called. You can tell I'm not a Sony guy, or I'm not a Nintendo guy. I'm not big ups on my Pokemon lore, to be honest. But there's definitely some of them I've seen where I'm like, oh, that's kind of egregious. This is fairly similar. But then there's some other ones where it's like, this is a big stretch, or some other ones where it's just like there is no real Pokemon equivalent to this. This is just an original creature. And also, we have to acknowledge the elephant in the room, being that, 99% of Pokemon are cartoon stylized animals. They're based off of animals. I mean, a lot of them are based off of like objects too. Like I know there's like a garbage can Pokemon now or whatever. One of them is like a set of keys. But like, really, at the end of the day, like, what are we talking about? Pokemon is cartoony stylized animals. And if other games are not allowed to use, like, do they have a monopoly on cartoony animals? Like, you're not allowed to have a CGI chipmunk in your game because Pokemon already did it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying Palworld doesn't take and borrow a lot from Pokemon, but it does something with it that Pokemon wasn't doing, that people wanted. Clearly there was a huge market for people that wanted a Pokemon style game with all of these features and gameplay that Palworld has offered, and Pokemon wasn't taking advantage of that. If Pokemon had a game out that was basically, you know what I mean? People talk about clones, like Splitgate. Let's use Splitgate, because people say Splitgate is basically just Halo. It borrows a ton from Halo, and it shoves portals in there. So that's more of like something where it's a clone or a reskin, or much closer to they took something that already existed and they threw a coat of paint on it. This is more like they built their own game completely from the ground up, and they sort of slapped an off-brand Pokemon paint on it. So it's not like they stole a Pokemon game, they just have colorful creatures in it. Does that make sense? Am I getting it across? Like if Pokemon had made Palworld, if it was Pokeworld, and it was the exact same game, but you know, instead of what I don't Pangullet? Is it Pangullet? Instead of Pangullet, it's Piplup. Instead of Cativa, it's Meowth, or whatever. Like if this was a Pokemon game, then I'm sure it would be just as successful, if not more so. Except you'd probably only be able to play it on the Switch. So then I would be mad. Oh shit, yeah. Sorry. The video was over. Okay, I forgot to mention, there's also people that are mad about Palworld saying that it's like animal abuse. I completely forgot about that. Like, I was done. I was starting to find my clips on, like, I was starting to edit this shit, and then I was like, oh yeah, people are also think it's animal abuse. It didn't even enter my mind because it's a fucking cartoon. I forgot that people think that you can't kill animals in a video game. I don't know if it's I don't know. Animal abuse is fine. I support animal abuse. I mean, well, let me restate that. let's restate that. I support animal abuse in video games. Anyway, I guess that's about it. Play Palworld.